Hi, this is Eric Bond, the founder of Beat the GMAT. I wanted to let you know that today's session is brought to you by ClearAdmit and Beat the GMAT. If you like what you see today, please check out the new MBA admissions course we built together called Navigating the MBA Admissions Process. This is a complete course on how to get into business school from start to finish. It's a course that I wish that I had when I applied, and I think that you're going to love it. You can learn more by going to udemy.com/business-school. Thanks.
Welcome to the Write Like an Expert series. Today we're going to be discussing Columbia Business School's essay topics in an effort to demystify the questions and help you put your best foot forward when you apply there. So let's start with a little bit of information on me. My name is Graham Richmond and I'm the co-founder of ClearAdmit. ClearAdmit is an admissions consulting company that works with MBA applicants as they navigate the process, providing insight and advice on essay topics, recommender selection, and really every aspect of the admissions process. My personal background is that I've been in the admissions domain for more than 10 years, actually worked as an admissions officer for the Wharton School, and also earned my MBA at Wharton. So I've been an applicant, I've been a student, and I've been an admissions officer, and that's the kind of perspective I'm going to hope to offer today as we tackle Columbia's essay questions. So let's get right into it. Columbia has 2 required essays for all applicants. And then there's sort of a third essay that is chosen from 3 options. Okay, so the first essay has actually been a fixture in the Columbia application for many years. It's a 750-word career goals essay. And essentially they're asking you to consider your goals and sort of talk about why Columbia, et cetera. And we're going to dive right into that in a moment. But as far as the rest of the application essays are concerned, they have a kind of life experience essay, and then they have a sort of pick from 3 options type question, and as you can see from the word counts here, 250 words for the optional kind of choice essay, and 500 words for the life experience essay. So let's get right into it and talk about that first essay. So again, the question is, considering your post-MBA and long-term professional goals, why are you pursuing an MBA at this point in your career? Additionally, why is Columbia Business School a good fit for you? So what I like about this essay is that they're pretty direct. They're really laying out what they're looking for in a response right in the question. I mean, they're asking you to kind of think through your post-MBA as well as your long-term career goals, and then to reflect on why you need the MBA now. I can't stress enough that that's somewhat of a unique point in the sense that many programs will ask you what your goals are, kind of where you're going, but fewer programs actually ask you why now, as in why this year is the year for you to be applying to business school. So you will need to reflect on that aspect of the prompt. Another thing that I think is nice about this is they're also very upfront about their interest in understanding your fit with their school, right? So they're asking you to kind of assess why Columbia. So again, any response to this question will be sort of part professional goals explanation, part kind of why MBA, why now, and part why Columbia. And you could almost think of it in thirds, really, kind of a third of the essay devoted to each of those 3 key areas. And I think that, again, many schools ask what we would call this kind of standard career goals essay, but things vary from program to program, and I will say that, Columbia is being pretty specific about a desire to understand your post-MBA goal, for example. So some programs focus on a big picture vision. Columbia is actually asking you to talk a bit about, what are you going to do when you graduate? What's that short-term goal, as well as the long-term? So they really want it all here. Now, it's also worth mentioning that Columbia have a 200-character question in their application form. I don't think it's fair to call it an essay at 200 characters, but it is a question in the application form in which you're supposed to state your career goals in 200 characters. So that's challenging in of itself, but in any event, you want to make sure that as you approach this longer essay that there's some consistency between the kind of rough outline that you've given them in 200 characters and the long, kind of longhand version at 750 words here. So one thing that I want to can't kind of emphasize enough is the timing issue, right? So paying attention to the timing of your application and why now is the right time. And I think that for most candidates, there are probably 2 possible reasons that now would be the right time for business school. And there are variations, maybe shades of gray around these possibilities, but for the sake of argument, let's focus on 2. Okay, the first one would be that you've reached a sort of natural turning point in your career The learning curve has flattened at work. You've learned what you can learn. You're ready to move on, and the MBA makes sense, and you need it to sort of move to that next phase of your career. And so now is the right time, because to stay at your current job would not necessarily provide you with a lot more, with kind of additional learning opportunities. And so by getting the MBA, you can kind of move up and learn more in your next role. So that would be one possibility for kind of a why now argument. Another would be kind of a sense of urgency around your career goals. So perhaps you're in field X now, and you really want to move to field Y. But field Y is a kind of ever-changing, really hot field. Like maybe it's renewable energy, or kind of healthcare. So it's industries that are kind of really changing very rapidly, and that you want to kind of get on board with. And so if you have very focused goals in that sector, you could almost argue that you want to get an MBA now so that you can be a part of that wave of what's happening in the industry. Whereas if you were to wait 2-3 years, then do the MBA and get out there, you may have actually missed the wave. So no one, so the renewable energy issues may have been solved by then, right? That would be wishful thinking, I guess. But in any event, let's so keep that in mind as you kind of approach this essay. Keep that in mind. The last thing I want to say about this essay is that Columbia-specific detail is vital for a successful response here. And the reason is that, here is a school that's saying to you, why are we a good fit? And the worst thing in the world you could do would be to give them an essay that doesn't actually tackle that aspect of the question. So you really want to make sure that you've done your homework, kind of looked into what life at Columbia is like, what kind of academic programs, professors, clubs, activities that they have that would fit sort of your career plan. So I really think this is vital. It's no secret that Columbia is one of the schools out there, and there are a handful of them, that really like to find people who they think are a good fit, and who've kind of done their homework and done the heavy lifting to sort of figure that out. They don't really take kindly to people who are sort of like, oh, I'm applying to a bunch of top programs and I'm going to have Columbia in the mix too. Sure, New York sounds nice. That's not the way to go with them. You really want to make sure that you're doing your homework and giving them a thorough response. Okay, so keep that in mind. Let's look at the second essay. This is a really great essay in contrast to the first, in the sense that the first essay is very kind of buttoned down. What are your goals? Why do you need this degree? Why now and why us? Okay, so very straightforward. You see that in a lot of MBA program essays. This second question is very different. It's completely open-ended. It's describe a life experience that has shaped you. And then they add, the goal of this essay is to get a sense of who you are rather than what you have achieved professionally. And this is a 500-word essay, and I think that they have that caveat at the end there to avoid candidates from just sort of using this essay as kind of another kind of an accomplishments essay. Oh, I had this great deal that went through at work recently, okay? They really want to get a sense of who you are, because I think on some levels, from your resume, your recommendations, and the other essays in the file, they'll already have a feel for kind of your professional past and sort of where you're going. And so this is your chance to kind of bring in that one anecdote or that one really meaningful experience that you've had that's kind of made you who you are. And I know it sounds very philosophical, but it's definitely worth considering, and it's a great way to sort of stand out in the applicant pool. So again, if you're trying to sort of think through this essay and what they're looking for, I would say the main task of the essay from their perspective is sort of, they're trying to figure out who you are today. And it's your job to communicate that to the admissions committee. I think that, another way to frame it as well is to make sure that whatever anecdote you're sharing here and whatever aspect of your background you really want to highlight, that you think about whether or not it could be a relevant sort of experience or aspect of you in terms of your life in the MBA program. So this is a chance to kind of highlight something about you that also suggests future contribution to the Columbia Business School community when you're a student there. I think that, this probably goes without saying, but this is probably going to come from academia, your extracurricular activities, personal experiences. The essay prompt seems to be pushing people away from professional kind of stories. Now, obviously, it's possible that you could have a professional experience that's not really run-of-the-mill, not just sort of your run-of-the-mill accomplishment type story, and that it would be relevant here, right? But for most people, this is kind of your chance to go into another dimension with your profile, to kind of really not do the status quo work story, to kind of go after something that happened to you at university or when you were, much younger or even in a community, related activity. So for most candidates, that's where this is going to be drawn from. I think that the other thing to remember is it doesn't have to be an accomplishment. So some people read this essay and they come to me and say, okay, I get it. I need a life experience that shaped me, and I'm not going to take it from work, because they say, that line about they don't want something that's, about what you've achieved professionally. And then they say, but I'm going to use an accomplishment from, the charity that I volunteer for, because I can fit that in. I've written other accomplishments essays, and that's going to work here. And so, again, I would encourage people to step back a moment and really think about the question, which is describe a life experience that has shaped you. And it's probably unlikely that that's kind of, some small accomplishment that you had recently for an extracurricular, community service type thing. So really step back, take inventory, think about what events have really shaped you and made you who you are today, and try to craft a response that, again, keeps in mind your potential for contribution at Columbia, and the sort of breadth of your candidacy. So again, I think the main thing you want to do is get that story out there and make sure that it's obvious to the reader that it's influenced you in a positive way. So if you have room, which with 500 words you should, you may go beyond just sort of describing the experience that shaped you and actually have some evidence as to where that experience or the shaping that took place has been relevant down the road even. So, perhaps you had an experience that shaped you when you were 15. Maybe your family moved from Eastern Europe to the United States when you were 15, and you had this really incredible experience that has kind of shaped your destiny, leaving a country and kind of starting anew. But then the question would be, how has that shaped you such that you approach things differently in life since, right? So keep that in mind as well, because that could be a great thing to sort of weave in at the end of this discussion. So let's talk about what I call the choice essays. They give you 3 options, and you have to pick one. These are each 250 words, so you already were dealing with a very brief kind of anecdote. But I thought we could go through each of the choices and sort of analyze what Columbia may be looking for with each of these questions. So the first one is about their outrageous business plan competition. And I'll just read it to you. It says, the annual A. Lauren Weil Outrageous Business Plan Competition is a student initiative managed and run by the Columbia Entrepreneurs Organization. The competition encourages Columbia MBA students to explore creative entrepreneurial ideas that are sufficiently ambitious in scope and scale to be considered, quote, outrageous, end quote. Students explore these ideas while learning firsthand what goes into the development and presentation of a solid business proposal. So then the actual question is, that's sort of the preamble, the actual question is, develop your own, quote, outrageous business idea. In essay form, compose your elevator pitch. And again, 250 words. So most people who see this essay question say, I've got a lot of great business ideas, but 250 words, that's gonna be really tricky to kind of convey. The other thing I want to make sure that everyone understands before you approach this essay, or really before you walk away from it as a choice, because I think a lot of people are just daunted by this question, is that when they say outrageous, it's not like you're supposed to come up with an idea for, an electronic, an electronic pet, that you keep in your house, or something wacky. Outrageous doesn't mean wacky in this context. It really means outrageous in scale. I mean, they talk about ambitious in scope and scale. I mean, that's the exact wording from the essay question. And so I think what they mean by outrageous is that you would dare to dream so big, like, for example, I think it's, the founder of FedEx, he had an outrageous business idea, which was, what, the U.S. mail system, not so good. I've got this idea that we could change that, and most people who heard his business plan when he was a student at Yale said, you are nuts. No one's ever going to change that. Okay, so that's probably a better context for you to think about what they mean by outrageous. And I think that, this is a great essay question. I think especially if you are kind of expressing entrepreneurial desire in your goals essay, like maybe you want to start your own business, you're probably almost going to be expected to take a look at this essay question and give them, a response, because it's just a great selection if you're an aspiring entrepreneur. So the next thing to keep in mind with this is that you should do some research, right? You should probably learn a little bit more about this business plan competition and also look at some of the past winners. That may inspire you somewhat, but it also will ensure that you're not kind of repeating a past idea by mistake, right? So do your homework and learn about what this competition is about, okay? And then, I would say that you need to kind of craft a really compelling pitch that outlines some need or demand and illustrates how, even though it's outrageous, it's attainable. Okay, so there's going to be some degree of salesmanship required in this essay in order to convince the reader that, yeah, it's wacky or it's a really bold, ambitious idea, but it's something that they should put down the file and say, wow, that's kind of interesting. So keep that in mind. And one thing I should say as well before we move on to the second option here is that each of these three options has a kind of twofold goal. Okay, the first part of the goal is to learn more about you, right? So as you write about an entrepreneurial idea or a business plan idea, invariably they're going to learn something about you or your areas of expertise or your passions, whatever that may be, okay? But I think also that the reason that these three questions exist in this section of the application is for you to learn more about Columbia as well. And that they have crafted these questions purposefully to kind of prompt, kind of push you to do a little bit of research into their program, okay? To learn more about the Outrageous Business Plan competition, or even the Columbia Entrepreneurs Organization. So there is that kind of double sort of purpose, the dual purpose here of these essays, where they really are hoping that you're going to learn more about their program, and then in doing so, you're going to get pretty excited and kind of go on from there. And ideally, if you're admitted, show up on campus. So let's look at the second essay question in this section. So this one, again, there's a bit of a preamble, and it says, Columbia deeply values its vibrant student community, the building of which begins at orientation when admitted students are assigned to clusters of 65 to 70 fellow students who take most of the first-year core classes together. During the first weeks of school, each cluster selects a cluster chair. Further strengthening the student community are the nearly 100 active student organizations at Columbia Business School, ranging from cultural to professional to community service oriented. Leadership positions within the cluster and/or clubs offer hands-on management and networking opportunities for students as they interact with fellow students, administrators, faculty members, alumni, and practitioners. And now here's the essay question, which is, you are running for either cluster chair or a club leadership position of your choosing. Compose your campaign speech. And again, this is 250 words, and I think most folks who've seen this question as well sort of say, oh, that sounds kind of interesting to kind of be the head of a club or a cluster chair. But gosh, a speech in 250 words, how am I going to really convey anything of value in such a short amount of time? So that is a challenge. I think that, again, getting back to the point I made earlier, this is a chance for you to learn more about Columbia. And that's obviously very helpful because it gives you a chance to sort of showcase your knowledge of the school as you kind of delve into this essay. So I would say, I view this essay as a chance for you to demonstrate your knowledge of Columbia's student organizations or cluster system, and to highlight your fit and contribution to that community. Okay, so keep that in mind. I think that, one thing that if you're structuring your speech, you're going to want to outline your interest in the position pretty briefly. Then kind of the impact you could make as a leader and the skills that you have in your background already that make you an appropriate choice for the position. And that kind of dovetails into my final point on this essay, which is that try to identify 2 or 3 main talking points. Focus on sort of strengthening existing initiatives in the club or what the clusters are currently doing, but also maybe adding complementary programming. So it could be that you're running for president of a club, and you may want to call out some of the things that that club has usually done. So maybe the club is the Media and Entertainment Club, and they have an annual media conference. So you might certainly call that out in your essay as something you're excited to lead, and that you have ideas for. But you may also think about ways to enhance that event, or things that you could suggest. So maybe something based on your personal experiences and background. Maybe there would be a unique focus to the conference that year. Or maybe you would propose blending the media conference with a technology conference due to the increasing kind of intersection in those two domains. So there are a lot of ways you could go. But I think it's important to sort of not only showcase your knowledge of the club or the cluster system at Columbia, but also kind of how your background could help you to make that organization or make your cluster even more effective. Okay, so keep that in mind. This is a great essay for people who are really intent on taking on those kind of public leadership experiences or opportunities in business school. So it's a good fit for someone who has that kind of a profile. Perhaps you were in student government, etc. So let's talk about the last essay in this section. This is, again, there's a preamble followed by a question. This is the way that they've organized these. So this one reads, founded nearly 3 decades ago, the Executives in Residence program at Columbia Business School integrates senior executives into the life of the school. Current executives in residence include more than a dozen experts in areas ranging from media and investment banking to private equity and management. A hallmark of the program is one-on-one counseling sessions in which executives advise students about their prospective career choices. And so there's actually a PDF that you can read that has a list of all the executives in residence with a kind of 1-paragraph bio. That's available on the Columbia website. And obviously you'll need to read that in order to select one of the executives. And the actual question that they're asking you to respond to is, select one of the current executives in residence with whom you would like to meet during your time at Columbia. Explain your selection and tell us how you would best utilize your half-hour one-on-one session. So this is a great essay. I actually think this one offers a lot of potential, and the reason for that is that it could serve as a really wonderful kind of counterpart to your career goal statement in the first essay, because in all likelihood you're going to be discussing your sort of future with this executive in residence. The other reason that it's interesting is that the executives in residence on the list are pretty varied. There's a good number of them, first of all, and they're quite varied in their experiences. And so it's unlikely that a candidate would go through that list and not say, oh, there's no one on the list I would want to talk to. I mean, most candidates looking at that list would say, there's 3 or 4, and they might have trouble picking who they want to actually sit down with. So again, this is an opportunity to kind of expand on your career goals, as mentioned in the first essay. And also, I think it's a great opportunity to kind of demonstrate your awareness of the range of information that would benefit you as you progress, right? So as you're going through the curriculum, being able to kind of step aside and have a conversation with a Columbia executive in residence could be helpful, and you can showcase that. And again, there is that two-way street here, where you're not only going to use the essay to kind of introduce the admissions officer to some further nuance in your goals or some new aspects of your background, but you're also going to use it as an opportunity to show the admissions reader that you know Columbia's program and are excited to kind of take part in it. So think carefully about which executive you select. I mean, you're going to be arguing that you're sitting down with them to gather insight, right? And so you should pick someone who makes sense. I mean, there are a lot of people to choose from, and so I'm hopeful that this won't be an issue. But make sure that you measure that decision carefully and think through sort of what is the executive's experiences and how might they work vis-a-vis your kind of career plan. The last thing I would say is make judicious use of this hypothetical time, right? So they're telling you have 30 minutes to sit down with the executive. You want to show the admissions reader that you would be thoughtful in how you approach that time. And so, just demonstrate your ability to come up with kind of unique questions and to showcase how asking those questions would help you in terms of moving along in your career or post-MBA life. Okay, so, I think that there could be a whole list of sort of obvious questions to ask an executive in residence, but I think for the purposes of this essay, it's helpful to dig deeper and get under the surface as quickly as possible. You only have 250 words to answer the question, and so the sooner you can kind of cut to the chase and really kind of get that executive to open up to you about specific questions you have, the better off you'll be. For example, hypothetically, let's say that your goal is to start a charter school, or maybe even a whole group of charter schools across the United States. There are a number of folks in the Executives in Residence program who, in addition to being private equity professionals or investment bankers or consultants, sit on boards, and many of them sit on the boards of universities or educational institutions. And so you could identify one of them and perhaps talk about your business plan and some of the very specific questions that you might actually have for them, given their exposure to kind of higher education and the kind of politics behind it and the relationship between the board and the kind of dean's office, et cetera. So I think it's really important to kind of get underneath the surface and don't just sort of kind of walk into that 30-minute session with an executive in residence and not really get at any of the kind of detailed questions you might have vis-a-vis your career. So that's the final choice here. And again, you get to pick one, and I think that you'll, based on your goals and based on the experience you share in the second essay, you should be looking at this as a third opportunity to introduce aspects of your background. And so you want to be strategic, look at all three options, think about which one fits. I will say that with Columbia's essays, you also have to pick one that you're comfortable with. So a lot of people are they're not entrepreneurs. They don't have an idea for an outrageous business plan, and so by nature they're going to focus on the other two questions and narrow from there. So keep that in mind, and try to be balanced and make sure that the admissions reader has a full picture of you when it comes time to put down your file. So on that, with that, I will conclude this session, and I wanted to draw your attention to a couple of resources that you might avail yourself of as you move forward. So the first is that ClearAdmit obviously does one-on-one consulting with MBA applicants, and you can reach out to us and learn more about that. We can help you with essay reviews, et cetera, brainstorming. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you may want to investigate this wonderful course that we've put together with Beat the GMAT called Navigating the MBA Admissions Process. And this is basically a class that teaches you how to navigate the MBA admissions process. And there are lessons on essay writing, lessons on recommender coaching, lessons on understanding the admissions officer's mindset. So it goes on and on and on, and it's a terrific course that can give you everything you need to be successful in the admissions process. Two other things in brief: we have a series of ebooks. There's a Columbia School Guide, there's a Columbia Interview Guide, and there's also generic sort of strategy guides about building your resume, selecting your recommenders, all kinds of things. So those ebooks are available on our website and can be very useful as you navigate this process. And then the last is the ClearAdmit website. We have a very active blog where there's just a constant flow of information about school news and kind of essay tips, etc. So keep all these things in mind, and I wish you the best of luck as you try to write like an expert and gain acceptance to Columbia Business School.
If you liked today's Write Like an Expert session, please be sure to visit udemy.com/business-school and check out our course, Navigating the MBA Admissions Process. Take a look at the free preview at the top of this page. This is a complete MBA admissions course featuring former admissions officers just like the speaker you saw in today's session. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you again.